Men som sagt, avfallshantering, allt hetare område i stora delar av världen, inte minst i Europa. Det finns också många internationella organisationer inom det här området. En sådan viktig organisation, CEWEP, står för Confederation of European Waste-to-Energy Plants, alltså alla de anläggningar som sysslar med att bränna avfall och göra om det till elektricitet och fjärrvärme. Jag pratade tidigare häromdagen med CEWEPs Managing Director, hon heter Ella Stengler. Och min första fråga till henne var helt enkelt vad CEWEP gör.
I'm the managing director of CEWEP, and CEWEP is the European umbrella association of the operators of waste-to-energy plants. We represent about 80% of the waste-to-energy capacity in Europe.
Okay. And tell us something about the situation right now. How large proportion of all the waste goes to energy in Europe?
Well, it's easier to say it for municipal waste because data is better on that. For municipal waste, it's about 27% that goes to European waste-to-energy plants. When it comes to all waste, it is less. It's about 19%, but data is less reliable for the non-municipal waste.
Okay. Is this the number that is increasing all the time, the proportion? Does it go in the sort of right direction, so to speak?
It has been increasing in the past quite well. So since the last 20 years, waste-to-energy, the share of waste-to-energy was 17% for municipal waste. It rose by 10%. But at the same time, recycling grew by 19 percentage points. So both recycling and waste-to-energy go hand in hand, as it should be, according also to EU targets.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say is driving the transformation when it comes to waste-to-energy? What are the key points that are driving this right now?
Well, the European environmental policy of the last 2 decades pushed for the diversion of the recyclable and the waste that can be recovered for energy purposes away from landfilling, higher up the waste hierarchy. And this helped to make sure that the materials embedded in the waste are either recycled or used for precious energy recovery instead of being just buried in landfills. However, despite all these progress and efforts in Europe, we still landfill almost 60 million tons of municipal waste each year. And when you count all waste, it's about 100 million tons that we still landfill every year. So still a lot of work to do.
Okay. But what would you say is a lot of work to do, you say? What kind of work is the key here? Is it new technology? Is it more capital, more investments, or new regulations and law? Or what do you think? What are the key points here?
Well, actually, it's all of the things you mentioned. They are all pieces that need to come together in order to improve the European waste management. A key point is definitely ambitious legislation and implementation, because many member states are still lagging behind with implementation of EU waste law. There's a recent study and they calculated that if the current EU waste law would be fully implemented and additionally the recycling targets and landfill diversion targets set for municipal waste would be also applied to other waste streams such as commercial and industrial waste, we could save annually about 150 million tons of CO2 equivalent emissions. And if we would additionally recycle more and stop landfilling waste that can be recycled or used for energy recovery, this amount could almost double to almost 300 million tons saved CO2 emissions per year. So implementation and future, hopefully ambitious EU legislation is key, and I hope that this study calculations will inspire the EU legislators to show more ambition in the upcoming review of EU waste law. Yeah, and then of course, technology. So in the waste to energy sector, recently developed technologies allow for new ways to produce energy and materials from the plants, like hydrogen, methanol, or even baking soda from the captured CO2. So investments are necessary to make sure these technologies can be used at a proper scale, and good policy making sets the pace so that the business models that are the most beneficial from the environmental, economic, and human health perspective could do the best job.
Touched upon that. Is it a big difference between different EU countries, how far they have come in this area?
There is a huge difference indeed. So infrastructure in waste differs a lot within the EU. There are some member states that still heavily rely on landfilling and landfill almost all of their waste, whereas other member states, among them Sweden, achieved to more or less phased out landfilling. They landfill less than 1% of municipal waste, and the rest is recycled or recovered for energy purposes. Really huge differences.
Would you say there's a possibility for more cooperation where sort of the good countries help the countries that hasn't come that far in different way? For example, could this be like sort of an export sector for Sweden?
Well, cooperation between the EU countries is of course possible and already is happening. So for instance, Swedish waste-to-energy plants treat waste coming from countries which do not have enough capacity to treat their non-recyclable waste. And this allows to reduce landfilling in these countries. And at the same time, it helps to heating up Swedish homes. Of course, there's a proximity principle in EU waste legislation, which is quite important. So it should ensure that waste is treated principally as close as possible to where it is produced. But of course, as I said, infrastructure is very different in the EU member states. And if a member state relies heavily on landfilling, then of course it's better if if it's not disposed of at the nearest place where the waste arises, but if it goes to higher up the waste hierarchy to efficient waste-to-energy plants.
Okay. Do you think we're going to see more of this cooperation between different countries in the future in different ways?
I don't know if it will be more. I think it works for now. If it will be more, I don't know, because some people don't like the idea that waste is shipped. But of course, it needs information. You have to explain people that the waste that is shipped, if you then can avoid that it's landfilled with all the negative climate consequences, and then it is really more beneficial to be used as an energy source efficiently in efficient plants like they are existing in Scandinavia, then hopefully it will be accepted. And there are studies showing that also from a CO2 perspective, energy recovery is preferable to landfilling for residual waste, even over long distances. So let's see what the future brings on that. If it will be more, I don't know, but more information might be necessary on that, on the advantages and under which conditions it should take place.
Ella, obviously the waste can be used both for heating and also with good technology for electricity. Does it matter in your view how the waste is, what it's producing? I'm thinking about the energy crisis in Europe now and the need for electricity. Would you say that this is an big possibility to make more electricity from waste?
Yes, but also heat. The heat sector depends heavily on natural gas, and it's difficult to decarbonize, and there's a huge potential for waste to energy to contribute even more also to heat supply. But in general, yes, it contributes to security of energy supply, and waste to energy is an affordable and reliable baseload energy. So it runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all around the clock. So you can rely on it, and it is also complementary to volatile energy sources. And actually, we did some calculation, and the energy generated by the European waste-to-energy plants correspond to about 9% of the gas that the EU imported from Russia. And as I said, there's potential to do more if waste-to-energy is supported and the energy embedded in the waste is not buried in landfills. But not only electricity, as I said, district heating is really also key. And in some regions, in Malmö, for instance, waste-to-energy covers more than half of the local heat demand. And that's not too bad, I think. Should be supported.